Hello, Rain patrons. I am here today with the incredible Mark Westwood, who I've known for quite a long time. You may or may not know him as our engineer and producer on the Rain Singularity album and on Radio Silence. And his involvement has been very important on both those albums. But actually, me and Mark and John Jowitt Mark go back a long way. So we'll be chatting about all that type of stuff and lots of prog stuff. So I'd like you to say hello to Mark Westwood. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Andy. Long time.
Yeah, hello.
How you doing? All right.
I'm all right, matey. So, what are you up to today?
Well, actually, I'm editing drums, funnily enough, for another band's album, and I've got a band rehearsing next door. Hopefully, you can't hear them.
I can hear it. If I really listen, I can hear in the background the dulcet tones.
Proud Mary.
Proud Mary, yes. So, how long have you had that studio there for?
The studio's been here for about 12 years. I think I got involved probably about 10 years ago. I sort of met up with a friend of mine called Damien, and he built this place to jam with some friends. That was his actual words. I'd love to jam with some friends. I'm going to build somewhere. And he built this ridiculous studio with a shower and everything, which has never been plumbed in properly.
Yeah.
And he invited me over to have a look around, and I just offered him, see if he wanted some help. And he said, "Do you want to get involved?" And I said, "Yeah." So that was it. I got involved, and then he decided to go and live in a different country, and sort of left me to it, really. And then the rest of it's history.
So you're situated in a deepest, darkest Worcestershire, in the countryside. Yeah. It's a lovely setting to make a progressive rock album, isn't it? It's very rural.
Yeah, I think for progressive rock, I mean, I think all those, like if Pink Floyd, and they always seem to like to be on farms and things, don't they, to record their albums?
Yes. So for the patrons who watch, let's go right back to the beginning. So I first met you when I joined IQ. You were working with IQ backstage, weren't you, doing all sorts of technical stuff?
John Jowitt's bitch, or John Jowitt's.
Yeah, but we need to narrow it down a little bit.
That's true. With John Jowitt, that could be anything, couldn't it? Yeah, I was John's bass tech, basically. That's how I got brought in, and all I did really was on Mike's guitars. Used to do that as well, but predominantly I was brought in for John, really.
And you're obviously a guitarist as well, and you've played with loads of progressive rock musicians. So tell them a little bit about what you've done on the playing side.
Okay, well, it goes back quite a way. I mean, I knew John through a band called Arc, and then John joined a band with me, and then we sacked him, and that sort of thing. Apparently, this is what he says. It's not entirely true. And then he joined IQ, and he asked me if I wanted to go out on tour with them, with the song, which I did. And I think I was driving a lorry, actually. So I did that, and then I got asked to join Arena as the guitarist in Arena, and I turned that down. I had a friend called John Mitchell, and I said he'll do it, and of course he did, and that's still going. And then I met up with Clive Nolan through that meeting, and then he got me involved in his musicals, and I played bass in Shadowlands and acoustic guitars in Shadowlands. And then we did Neo, which was me, you, and John and Clive as the backing band with numerous pop stars and rock stars
of the neo progressive rock world. Yes, I remember it well.
Yeah, that was good fun. It was really good fun. I enjoyed the gigs were great. From what we did, it was kind of been thrown at the deep end. I think our first gig was pretty much in America, wasn't it?
Yeah, it might have been in. I remember we did a warm up near Nick Barrett's house in that pub.
Yeah, somewhere near Swindon.
Yeah, somewhere.
So we did a warm up, and then the next gig I think was in Rosfest, wasn't it?
That was it. Yeah. That was a great gig. It was a great band. I mean, it was sort of we've been able to pick all the musicians, and then had all.
I don't know why they picked me.
No, you were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So. But you're a player first and foremost, but you've moved more and more towards production. And I've got to say, Mark, you did such an incredible job on our albums, and you really got us out of a whole, because I'd recorded, the album basically in my garage
Yeah.
under sort of, less than perfect situations.
It
And
wasn't that bad, was it? I mean, the drums really were the problem, weren't they? It was the kick drum was really the problem. The snare and your hi hats and that sounded lovely, and we just tweaked it a little bit, and
yeah, well,
it
I just didn't know where we were, because I'd recorded it in there and it was over lockdown and I hadn't been able to take it anywhere else.
yeah,
So the first thing was just to be able to bring it to a good studio like yours where we could actually hear what it actually sounded like in a flat
yeah,
room, where you can actually hear what's going on, So that was
yeah,
incredible. But the job you did, and the thing I love about your production, because it says on the album that we produced it, but I've got to say, Mark, you'd really helped produce that album. It wasn't just engineering, there was so
no,
many artistic decisions that you helped us with. But like me, you're a stickler for real playing. You're not one for the old quantization and auto tuning
no,
and all that
no.
sort of stuff. So you will vouch that it's pretty much real playing on these albums, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, there's no jiggery pokery on this album, on either of the albums really. I mean, there's just it's treatment on the albums, but it's all the real deal. Like you, I love real drums, and what I sort of don't like about certain elements of prog is that, like, when they get the drum kit. I remember hearing, I think it was the album you played on with IQ. Is it Frequency?
Yeah.
Yeah, and John bought me a CD round, which was the album pre-mixed. It was just literally the monitor mixes of the album,
Mm,
and I put it on, and I just went wow, because it was so lively, and the drums were just like totally there. Really
mm.
like your drums are on the Rain albums. Like totally there. And I thought this is going to be a great album. And then when I heard it when it was mixed, the drums were compressed so much that they just became this tiny little. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but there was so many dynamics in the kit when I heard it the first time, and then the second time round, it had just been squashed. And so when you came along to do the Rain album, and I remember one of the first things you said when you came in was like, "Don't muck around with my drums." Which was quite scary. When I remember speaking to you on the phone even before I heard them, and you said, I don't want you playing with my drums. I don't want any beat detectives. I don't want no software involved. I don't want no samples, replacing samples and things like that. And I just went, okay. And he brought them in. And to be honest, that album, in the form that you brought it in on Cubase when you first brought it in, was there already. It was a great. You could hear what was supposed to happen with that album. It was almost like I'd been given a brief in audio sound rather than in written word. So when you came over and played it, I could hear it. I could see what you wanted on certain levels, and then there was other levels where I had no idea what you wanted. Especially with Singularity, the song, the track.
Yeah,
Singularity.
I think Singularity, because that was the one track that I mixed. I actually
Yeah,
mixed that because I think
yeah,
it was just so bonkers. And when I say mixed it, I just basically we ran off what I had on my Cubase arrangement file back at home, with a few
yeah.
tweaks, because it was such a strange track and so hated by most Rain fans as well. All that work. There's a review. Yeah, there's a review come out today, and
Yeah.
they've said something like wisely. They have decided not to go down any ambient or electronica routes this time, because people hated that one.
Maybe you should have let me mix it. It might have been all right.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember doing a mix of that, but I'd got it in my head. I could hear things like Massive Attack and things like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of went a bit overboard with reverbs and delays. And I remember, like, quite proudly listening to it, thinking, "Oh, that sounds great." It was a little bit of a departure from the rest of the album, but I really liked it, and I thought, "Oh, this is sounding great." And I remember sending it over to you, and you turned around and went, "Oh no." And I thought, I was doing so well up to then.
Well, I've had a number of musicians, contact me saying, where do you get that album mixed, and considering
Really?
it was recorded in our bedrooms, and then you've had to salvage everything. It was an incredible
Mm,
job, and it was so subtle what you did,
yeah.
and I was also really impressed that in terms of mastering, there was hardly any mastering either, because the mix but you got the right mix, you know, and it was under stressful circumstances. I can remember us sort of bombarding you with a hell of a workload because it's not easy mixing a progressive rock album with 15-minute tracks and 30 layers of vocals and 15 guitars, you know.
I think it was the world famous Rain. Everything's kind of going okay. Yes, you know, sounding good. We're loving it. We're loving it. By the way, you've only got 3 days left to mix it. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've just started on track 1.
Yeah, I remember. So when we came back to do the second album, which was I got some sort of program MIDI demos, but we were able to work over those properly, and in many cases we could jam stuff in the studio or play together, and we did everything that we couldn't do before. And I can remember those few days where I brought my drum kit in and we set it up, and it's got to be the greatest drum sound I've ever had. It was just, I mean, but you were shocked as well. I remember you wanted to buy my drum kit off me at one point.
You only just had it as well.
Yeah.
I only had a few fingerprints on it at that point, I should think. But the thing about recording drums is that you never know what you're going to get until you start recording them. There's miking up techniques for drums. I remember you saying, "Oh, Mark knows how to mic up a drum kit." It's not really that. I don't actually really know how to mic up. I know where mics go on a drum kit, but sometimes you get lucky and it's a great sounding kit and it's a great drummer. And if you get the combination of the two, then you're on a winner already, you know. And I mean, I remember you bringing that drum kit in, and I don't think you'd had it very long, had you?
No, just picked it up from British Drum Company, yeah. And I think I'd had our mate Justin, my drum tech, and you know, he'd come in and done his magic on it, and I think that makes a big difference. I would say anyone who's recording drums, have somebody there that knows how to tune them and get them to tune it in the room, because which we didn't do, but just but I did have a tweak in the room. I remember we took the front head off, didn't we? And
I think the front head was already off, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think you came in and said, apologised that the front head was off. And in actual all honesty, I think that was the first time I'd recorded a bass drum with the head off it. But I know that people like Simon Phillips had done it, and they were raving about it at one point, because people like Simon Phillips seem to change their mind about the perfect way to do things, you know.
Yeah.
But I'd heard a thing about him saying that he always takes the heads off a kick drum, or either is it the resonator head?
The front head. I got that from a producer called Dave Z that I worked with on an Ian Parker album, and he'd worked with like Prince and stuff like that, and he got me to take the front head off, and then just you can get the mic right in there, because often when you're micing at the front, I think that resonant head is getting picked up more than the batter head, isn't it? And so, you know, people always have to end up putting 3 mics on the kit, which you still did. I remember we still had them all up there. But
we got the sub kick, haven't we? You know, which is the internal mic I put in the Beta 50. The Beta 91. I put that in, and normally that's in there. It gives you the tone that you want, but sometimes I use that for a trigger. If I suddenly have to add a trigger to a drum, it's quite handy because it's quite immediate, that one.
Yeah.
And then I think with the other mic, the sub kick is always, no matter whether there's a head on there or not, it'll always pick up a bit of sub out of the kick drum. And then the interesting thing I like about the normal, what I class as a normal kick drum mic, is it's something I picked up off you, listening to you talking one day, when you were saying about how you don't aim it at the batter head, you tend to aim it at the shell inside the drum, you know, and moving it around inside there can get you so many different tonal differences inside a kick drum, you know. So some of the stuff I do when I mic up drum kits is actually listening to you when you were in IQ.
Well, the thing I noticed when I came to your studio, which I thought was brilliant, and it's really sold me as a place to record drums, is that the drums are in that sort of wooden room, aren't they? And that room acoustically feels porous to me. It's the only way I can explain it. You feel that something's coming back, but you also feel that something's going out. It's not all coming back. And I always think that's perfect for drums. And then you're sort of boxed off. So if the other musicians are there, you're isolated enough, and you can actually close it off altogether, or you can open it up, can't you? So Yeah, so there's you've got so many options there, but I found I could feel like I was in the room playing with John, that John could
Mm,
be in front of me playing, and yet I also felt enclosed as well. It's like I can remember
yeah,
when I was very young recording at Pebble Mill, and they had these huge rooms that you recorded in, and I did a couple
yeah,
of sessions for the BBC, which went straight down to 2 tracks, so they just mixed it, you know, old school.
yeah.
And they
Stereo.
had these rooms that they were sort of folded down, and then they'd wheel them out, and then they'd
Yeah.
close them, and you'd be wherever you were sat, you'd be encased. And that, but you had like a window out, so you could just set up where you'd normally go, and then you get encased in. And
Yeah.
I quite like that. I like to be encased and yet be able to be with the band, because
We
it's
like
either
to be
one or the other.
contained.
Yeah.
Contained is the word we're looking for,
Yeah, I
isn't
like
it?
to be contained, but I've done some sessions where you're in a different room on like a television monitor and you're all on headphones, and
Yeah.
it's horrible. That is.
It's really funny, isn't it? Because, like, you want musicians to feel comfortable, and they're comfortable when they're in the same room and looking at each other, and you can do that here. I mean, that's the nice thing about this
Mm.
studio is you can throw everybody. I think we did, wasn't it Something New? Didn't we record that pretty much as
That
a
was head
live?
on. I think Radio Silence was all played at the same time originally. It
Had to
might,
be,
have,
I guess, didn't it?
yeah, and it was improvised as well. So it was lovely to do that. One of the things that's interesting we touched on, and I'd like to get into it a little bit more, because I think people who are watching this on the Patreon, and we're getting people adding to the Patreon now, so hopefully there'll be a few prog fans there. I'm not sure they're quite aware how much jiggery pokery, as you referred to it, producers use, especially on prog albums nowadays.
Mm.
So can you explain a little bit of what other people are doing? When we're talking about the autotune and beat detective and
Yeah,
drum replacement, some of the stuff that's going on that you and me are both not fans of.
yeah. Well, I suppose, I mean, we've kind of touched on the drum thing. I mean, the drum, I think the biggest taboo that real drummers hate is Beat Detective, which is a Pro Tools sort of program or plugin. But also, I think other programs, like Cubase, and that, I think they've all got their own versions of something that quantizes
Yeah.
normal audio. And Beat Detective is, I've only ever used it a couple of times, and every time I've used it, it just turns the drummer into a drum machine. Really, and it takes all the life and all the dynamic out. So, and I know a lot of people use that a lot because everyone's so used to now drums sounding so tight and so rhythmic, like so mechanical
Yeah.
that, I mean, some bands even use drum machines instead of real drummers, and then trying to make out that they're actually a drummer playing, but it's a machine. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get into trouble. But you and me both know who does things like that.
A band that I was connected with.
Oh, what you connect? I've been connected with so many bands, haven't you? I mean, I don't want to get frosty about it. All right, so it's just there. I'll get into trouble now. Anyway, but yeah. So with drums, that's one of the things they do. They overcompress drums a lot in a lot of music at the moment, not just prog, but a lot of music. And I think that, like, if you hark back to some of the greatest albums that you like, like the Floyd albums, all the bands from the 70s, no matter what band you pick, the drums were like, they were just amazing sounding drums, and probably they had the least treatment on them at that point, because drums, I think, from the 70s into the 80s, I think they didn't really look that much at drums and think, we need to work on these and make them sound massive and all that, like the, your John Bonham kit and all that with like 3 microphones on it. That was an exception because that was a great sound, but it was something that wasn't important. And now it's gone the other way around. It's processed to hell. And sometimes you do sit there thinking, is that a real drummer? And then if it's not a real drummer, you're thinking, is that the real drum kit? So that happens.
For me, I mean, I've been very vocal in hating all of this. But I've got to be honest, if I've done a nice take and I went out of time on a couple of bars, I just lost the time, and someone wants to throw Beat Detective on and fix that bit for me so I don't have to do it again, I've got no problem with that. I think that's the way it should be used. But so often in the studio, you'll do a take and then you'll go and make yourself a ham sandwich, you know, and as you're doing it, they're just automatically running the whole take,
yeah,
you know, through. And you're thinking, well, why? Because if it sounds right, why do you want to do that? But the thing is that it's when it's married up with drum replacement and
yeah,
and real intense editing, you know, this thing of like,
yeah,
you know, you cut one drum one bar out, loop it all the way through, quantize it, and then use it to replace.
mm,
All that together, for me,
yeah.
it's sort of I don't respond to it anymore because I
No,
love drumming and I got no problem listening to drum machines. I can listen to dance music quite happily because it's a drum
yeah,
machine. But
yeah,
when there's a drummer in a band, I respond to that, and I
yeah,
think a lot of this has come from. Don't you think? I can remember when I was very young recording to tape, and I can
yeah,
remember plugging a microphone into, you know, a tape recorder and recording drums, and the straight away it just you get all that compression and thing going on, and I
yeah,
think everyone misses that, and they're trying to get the vibe using the technology. They've just gone too far, you know.
yeah,
And it's the same thing with virtual amps as well.
yeah. It's everything. It's
Yeah,
yeah. Again, everything's got a place. You can use everything, like you said. Like, you know, you can use like your beat detectives or elastic audio,
yeah.
which is actually, I prefer elastic audio, where you can physically just slide
Slide
little
one
bits of
bit, yeah,
notes. Yeah, it keeps the real drummer there. You know, you just think, okay, well, he tripped over on a snare or something, so you just
yeah,
move it and move it around. But yeah, I mean, same with these. My favourite is Kemper. It's the amount of times I've been out on tours, and metal bands especially, they'll all have Kemper amps, and they'll have three guitarists on stage, and they've all got the exact same sound.
mm,
But you'll go up to them and you'll say, I said, "Oh, it's one of those Kempers," and they'll go, "Yeah, this is a VHT amp, and this one over here is a Mesa Boogie amp, and that one over there is something else." But then you go, "But they all sound the same."
same.
There's no character. You know, I think that's what's missing a bit in music is the individualism and character of a musician. Not in things like jazz, that's
Yeah,
well, you know, but in certain genres of music, the element that's been taken out is the musician and the individual character and tone of a musician. You know, and that's why music's a little bit not quite there at the moment. You know, in a lot of places.
and it's difficult for guys like you that run recording studios because what recording studios offer is a technology which is absolutely incredible because people can all go in the room at the same time and play and they can get a vibe. You know,
Yeah,
you can jam, and then when you get it right, you can hit record, and then you've got all the technology to separate all that out and be able to
yeah,
do a mix and all that stuff. And people have
mm,
swapped that for, you know, assembling stuff in their bedrooms, which I understand it, but I just think it's a shame that that you know, like progressive rock bands like, you know, the genre we're in, and say heavy metal and all that type of things, where you are buying into it being a band. It would
yeah.
nice for there to be an actual band there at some point in the process, you know. So and
Yeah,
I wonder um how much the audience actually know how much cheating is going on. I've used the word cheating, but that there I've used it, but how much they know that that is actually happening. Because like, the amount of prog fans I've said, listen to like Yes or Genesis, and
uh,
now go and put like a new album on and listen to it. Do you
yeah,
really think the players are that much better?
yeah, yeah,
That you know, whereas people would play and you could hear things slowing up and speeding up, slowing down, and you know, and all that type of thing that you'd get, you know, they sound like robots. It's such a
yeah.
shame, really. And I think that was one of the biggest things with Rain that I wanted to do. You know, was
I think
this is
with
why it was
Ray,
very important to find some guy like you that agreed and didn't secretly want to get in there and you know,
I've got to be honest. I mean, I have people coming in, and singers mainly, they'll come in and they'll say, "Have you got auto tune or Melodyne?"
yeah,
And I'll go, "Yeah, I have." And then they'll say, "Brilliant." And if they, I worry as soon as someone says that to me. Um, and what I normally say is, "Well, to be honest, you're not going to get to use them." And if it takes like a week of you singing, I want a week of you singing. I want the real voices. I don't want
yeah,
the cheating. I don't want to fix it in the mix. That expression really annoys me because there's no such thing really as fixing the mix. Everyone's got these little words that they've heard from the past, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, fixing the mix is definitely one of them. And I've done fixing the mix, and it's a headache because you spent hours and hours and hours fixing bad musicianship and making them into something they're not. You know, and then people go and see them live and suddenly think, well, they don't sound like they do on the album. So, you know, you get a lot of that. I mean, going back to the Rain albums, both the Rain albums, I didn't actually do anything to the drums as far as timing went. And I know that like there was a couple of places where you said, "Oh, there's that floor tom's a bit rogue," you know, and I think I did bring it in a bit. You know, there was one that went through the whole of the recording process, and it was always rogue all the way through. And every time you popped over, you'd hear it and go, "That floor tom's a bit rogue." And I'd go, "Yeah, I know." And I think I fixed it on the mix day.
Yeah.
On the actual day when I mixed it, I moved it in, and I sat there thinking, I wonder if Andy will notice that drum's gone.
Well, the thing is that there's stuff that you did where you changed the arrangements right at the end, which means you had to recut drums. You know, into sometimes, you know, there's a drum loop at one point, which I love. And I like that because I like the contrast between, you know, big, full, long takes. And then there is a little bit of loopiness and stuff going on. And I love all that, you know. I'm not against all this stuff. It's
it's part of the writing process, really.
Yeah, I just think people, they just need to use it creatively. I think that's the real thing, rather than just doing it out of insecurity without even listening. It's as though people don't even listen anymore. They go, right, we've done the vocal, let's start tuning it in, and rather than going through and go, well, I didn't like the way I sang that. Well, go back in and sing it again, because that's what a recording studio can do. You know, you can sing it line by line if you want. I'd rather have that than, you know, somebody just, you know, stretching and tuning vocals in for hours on end. You know,
You know what? I think a studio engineer, every studio engineer, their kind of dream in a way is to capture a performance of a band, not get perfection. They want a performance. They want to capture that sort of energy and that. It's almost like the same as seeing a live band and going, wow, you know, you don't have that element when you do a recording because they're only going to listen with their ears. They're not going to have the visual side of it. So it's all one sort of element of the human body. But you just want to like you want to listen to something and actually feel like the band was so tuned together as musicians that it's just you've caught this moment and this magic and you've captured it forever, you know. And I thought with when like things when you did Singularity, Radio Silence, when you went into the room and you just plugged in and we had everything mic'd up and you just played it, and I think you played it a couple of three times because you were writing it as you were playing it. You know, you were stopping and suggesting new ideas and things like that. And that for me was the closest I'd ever got with a band in the studio to actually capturing a performance and sitting back and listening to it and actually thinking, yeah, you're in a moment, you know, capturing a moment, which was nice.
Well, I can tell you something that we had a band meeting on a Monday night, and we sat down and planned the next move. And you know, we really want to make. Even John is now starting to say, because you know how much John loves his gigs, but he's really saying the most important thing is the recording and to get, you know, as much raw recording as we can done and get like lots of product out there. I hate to call it products, but you know, lots of creative stuff out there. And so, you know, we're planning. I won't say what we're planning here, but it's pretty big. And I got I got quite fired up, and I sat in my little studio in my garden. I've started writing now, but I'm trying to write in a way where the stuff can't be salvaged. So I've really got just a couple of mics on the kit, and I've got, you know, the bass. I'm using the guitar and the bass input as the same, you know. So you know, so that and what I want to do is try and get down yours with the sort of demo, like old school demo. Get everyone to learn it and then try and record it down. You know, that's always been the dream, is to try and capture that. But I think this time, if we can organize it a little bit better, we can sort of go in and just do one track. That would be the perfect thing.
Yeah.
And Of course, you need paying, so I'm hoping that we can get the Patreon. So all you patrons out there, you know, the more people we can get in here, the more we can spend this down at Mark's, doing more and more and more, and then that will create more and more and more, and that's what prog is about, isn't it? You know,
Not making money.
No, it's not about making money.
Definitely not in music.
No.
Yeah. So we've done a fair bit of talking here about the usual nonsense we always talk about when we get together.
Well, as I was getting lost in that last bit of comment, just trying to let the patrons know that we are just starting on the next album now. I have started my bit at least. A little alarm came up saying that we've only got a few minutes left, Mark. So we've come to the end of this. This is the very first interview, Rain Patreon interview. So you've been the first one, and I'm hoping, you know, once we get into the process, because this is pretty easy to do. You know, it'd be nice to just jump in and get this so we can document what's going on. So thanks for doing this, Mark. And I'm very happy to introduce our fans to you, because it's so important in this band. So and thank you for everything you've done for us. Been lovely.
It's been an honour, actually, to be honest, Andy. It's been I've really enjoyed it. There's certain bands I like working with, and Rain are sort of up there.
Well, we're coming up to. I mean, I met you in 2005, so we're nearly coming up for 20 years working together. Wow. So people don't realise this, but anyway, mate, I'm gonna switch off the recording now. So would you like to say bye to all the patrons? Bye patrons.
Bye patrons.
Bye patrons.
Speak to you again soon, hopefully.
Okay, I've got to know how to stop this right.